What happens when two of comedy's biggest personalities clash live on air in front of millions of viewers? You're about to find out as we dive into one of the most explosive moments in talk show history. Before we get into this incredible story, make sure to hit that subscribe button and let me know in the comments what you think really caused this blow-up. Trust me, you won't want to miss a single detail of what went down. The atmosphere in Studio B felt electric as Jenna Martinez adjusted her earpiece and shuffled through her note cards one final time. The Jenna and Friends show had become appointment television for comedy fans across the country, known for its relaxed vibe and candid conversations with the biggest names in entertainment. But nothing could have prepared the audience, or Jenna herself, for what was about to unfold. Heidi Gardner walked onto the set with her signature confident stride, waving to the enthusiastic studio audience. The Saturday Night Live star had been making headlines with her latest film project, and this interview was supposed to be a fun, lighthearted discussion about her career journey. The chemistry between host and guest seemed natural at first, with both women sharing laughs during the brief pre-show chat. "We're back in 30 seconds, called out the floor director, and Jenna straightened in her chair, flashing her million-dollar smile toward camera 2. "And we're live in 5, 4, 3. The countdown continued, and suddenly the red light was glowing. "Welcome back to Jenna and Friends. I'm your host, Jenna Martinez, and I'm here with the incredibly talented Heidi Gardner." Jenna began with her usual warmth. "Heidi, thank you so much for being here today. You look absolutely stunning." "Thank you for having me, Jenna. I've been looking forward to this conversation," Heidi replied, settling into the plush interview chair across from her host. The first few minutes proceeded exactly as planned. They discussed Heidi's recent film roles, her experience working on Saturday Night Live, and her upcoming projects. The audience was engaged, laughing at the right moments and applauding enthusiastically. Both women seemed comfortable and genuinely enjoying themselves. "Now, Heidi, I have to ask about something that's been making waves online," Jenna said, consulting her notes with a slightly mischievous glint in her eye. "There have been some interesting rumors about your working relationships with certain cast members. Care to address those?" The temperature in the room seemed to shift almost imperceptibly. Heidi's posture straightened slightly, and her smile became just a fraction more guarded. "Well, Jenna, I think we both know how the rumor mill works in this industry," Heidi responded carefully. "People love to create drama where none exists. The cast at SNL is like a family, and like any family, we have our moments. But we support each other." "That's a very diplomatic answer," Jenna pressed, leaning forward slightly. "But sources close to the show have suggested there were some pretty intense creative differences during your recent sketches. Some even say there were shouting matches backstage." The audience could sense the shift in energy. Heidi's jaw tightened almost imperceptibly, and she took a moment before responding. "Jenna, I'm not sure who these sources are, but they clearly don't understand how collaborative comedy works," Heidi said, her voice remaining steady but with a new edge. "Creative discussions can get passionate. That's how good comedy gets made. If someone wants to call that shouting matches, that says more about them than it does about our process." "Fair enough. Fair enough," Jenna nodded. But there was something in her tone that suggested she wasn't quite ready to let this topic go. "But you have to admit there does seem to be a pattern here. This isn't the first time your name has come up in discussions about on-set tension." The studio fell silent for a beat longer than was comfortable for television. Heidi's eyes narrowed slightly as she studied her host's face, as if trying to decode exactly where this line of questioning was heading. "I'm sorry. What exactly are you implying, Jenna?" Heidi asked, her voice still controlled, but with an unmistakable warning tone. "Oh, I'm not implying anything at all," Jenna replied with what appeared to be innocence, though her smile didn't quite reach her eyes. "I'm just asking the questions that our viewers want answered. They're curious about the real Heidi Gardner behind the characters. The real Heidi Gardner is sitting right here, answering your questions honestly," Heidi shot back, her media training clearly kicking in as she tried to steer the conversation back to safer territory. Maybe we should focus on the work itself, which is what I'm here to promote. But Jenna seemed determined to push forward with her agenda. Of course, the work is important, she agreed, flipping through her cards again. Speaking of which, I noticed you weren't in several sketches during the last few episodes you were scheduled for. Was that a creative choice, or were there other factors involved? The question hung in the air like a challenge, and everyone in the studio could feel the tension ratcheting up another notch. Heidi's media-trained smile was beginning to crack around the edges. Sketches get cut for time, Jenna. That's how live television works, Heidi explained, but there was steel creeping into her voice. If you're suggesting something else, I think you should just come out and say it instead of dancing around with these loaded questions. I'm not suggesting anything, Jenna protested, though her body language suggested otherwise. I'm simply trying to give you a platform to address some of the speculation that's been swirling around your career lately. Speculation that you seem very eager to amplify, Heidi countered, shifting forward in her chair. The friendly promotional interview atmosphere had completely evaporated, replaced by something much more combative. The audience was riveted now, sensing they were witnessing something unprecedented. This wasn't the usual gentle sparring between host and guest. This was beginning to feel like a genuine confrontation unfolding in real time. Heidi, I think you're being a little defensive. Here, Jenna said, her host's smile still plastered in place but her tone growing sharper. These are legitimate questions that any professional in your position would expect to field. Legitimate questions, Heidi repeated, her voice rising slightly for the first time. Jenna, you've spent the last 10 minutes trying to create controversy where none exists. This is supposed to be an interview about my work, not a fishing expedition for gossip. The two women stared at each other across the small interview space, and the studio audience held its collective breath. Something was building here, and everyone could sense it was about to reach a boiling point. The staring contest between the two women stretched on for what felt like an eternity, but was probably only 3 or 4 seconds of dead air. Finally, Jenna broke the silence, but instead of backing down, she doubled down on her aggressive approach. Look, Heidi, I understand this might be uncomfortable, but our viewers deserve honest conversations with the celebrities they support, Jenna said, her voice taking on a sanctimonious tone that immediately set Heidi's teeth on edge. We're not here to blow sunshine up anyone's skirt. Blow sunshine up anyone's skirt? Heidi repeated incredulously, her eyebrows shooting up. Jenna, what show do you think you're hosting here? This is supposed to be Jenna and Friends, not some tabloid ambush interview. I'm just doing my job as a journalist, Jenna replied, straightening her shoulders defensively. Real journalism means asking the tough questions, even when they make people uncomfortable. Journalist? Heidi let out a short, bitter laugh that sent a chill through the studio audience. Jenna, you host a daytime talk show where you usually discuss celebrity fashion choices and favorite recipes. Don't pretend this is some hard-hitting investigative piece. The insult landed like a physical blow. Jenna's carefully maintained composure cracked visibly, and her smile disappeared entirely for the first time since the camera started rolling. Excuse me? Jenna snapped, her voice dropping to a dangerous whisper. I've been doing this for over a decade, and I've interviewed some of the biggest names in Hollywood. Just because I don't ambush my guests with gotcha questions doesn't mean I'm not a real journalist. Then why are you starting now? Heidi fired back without missing a beat. What makes me so special that I deserve the full interrogation treatment? Or is this just what happens when your ratings start to slip and you need to create some buzz? The audience gasped audibly at this direct attack. Bringing up ratings was hitting below the belt in the television industry, and everyone knew it. Jenna's face flushed red, and for a moment it looked like she might actually lose control completely. My ratings are just fine, thank you very much, Jenna said through gritted teeth, her media training barely keeping her from completely exploding. But if you want to talk about careers that might need some attention, let's discuss how you've Been relegated to background roles in most of your recent SNL appearances. Now it was Heidi's turn to look genuinely shocked. The comment was a direct hit on her professional insecurities, and the entire studio could see it land. "That is completely out of line," Heidi said, her voice shaking with anger. "You clearly did your research on all my vulnerabilities before I walked in here. This wasn't supposed to be an interview. This was supposed to be a hit job." "A hit job?" Jenna laughed harshly, but there was no humor in it. "Heidi, you came on my show to promote your projects. If you can't handle basic questions about your career, maybe you're in the wrong business." "Basic questions?" Heidi stood up abruptly from her chair, causing the wireless microphone pack to shift awkwardly at her waist. "Jenna, you've spent the last 15 minutes trying to imply that I'm difficult to work with, that I've been demoted at SNL, and that there are mysterious sources spreading rumors about me. Those aren't basic questions. Those are character assassinations." The studio audience was completely silent now, watching this train wreck unfold with a mixture of fascination and horror. The camera operators were getting signals from the control room to keep rolling, sensing they were capturing something that would be talked about for months. If asking about publicly reported incidents constitutes character assassination in your mind, then maybe the problem isn't with my questions, Jenna shot back, rising from her own chair to match Heidi's confrontational posture. Maybe the problem is with how you handle any form of accountability. Accountability? Heidi's voice cracked with disbelief. "Jenna, you ambushed me with gossip and rumors, refused to tell me who your sources are, and then acted like I'm being unreasonable for pushing back. This isn't accountability, this is tabloid television." "Well, maybe if you gave me something real to work with instead of these rehearsed sound bites, we wouldn't have to dig so deep," Jenna retorted, her own professional mask completely slipping now. "Do you know how boring most celebrity interviews are? Everyone just wants to talk about their craft and their journey. Nobody tells the truth anymore." "The truth?" Heidi stepped closer to Jenna's desk, her eyes blazing. "You want the truth? The truth is that you're a failed actress who couldn't make it in scripted television, so now you make your living by tearing down people who actually succeeded. Is that honest enough for you?" The words hung in the air like a bomb that had just detonated. The studio audience sat in stunned silence, and even the production crew seemed frozen in place. Jenna's face went through a series of emotions, shock, hurt, rage, all cycling rapidly across her features. "How dare you?" Jenna whispered, her voice barely audible but somehow carrying to every corner of the silent studio. "How dare you come on my show and attack my career, my life's work?" "Your life's work?" Heidi laughed bitterly, but there was pain mixed with the anger now. "Jenna, your life's work seems to be making other people feel as small as possible so you can feel big. Well, congratulations, mission accomplished." "You know what, Heidi?" Jenna's voice was gaining strength now, fueled by pure rage. "I've interviewed hundreds of celebrities, and most of them understand that this comes with the territory. But you can't handle even the slightest bit of scrutiny without falling apart." "Falling apart?" Heidi's voice rose to match Jenna's intensity. "I'm not falling apart. I'm calling out a bully who thought she could steamroll me because I'm usually nice in interviews. Well, surprise, I have a backbone." "A backbone?" Jenna scoffed. "Is that what you call throwing a tantrum when someone asks you legitimate questions about your career? Because from where I'm sitting, it looks like you can't handle your business being discussed in public." "My business?" Heidi took another step forward, and now she was practically looming over Jenna's desk. "My business is comedy, entertainment, making people laugh. Your business, apparently, is making people miserable for ratings." The two women were now face to face across the interview space, both breathing heavily, both clearly beyond the point of no return. The studio lights seemed harsh and unforgiving, highlighting every line of tension in their faces. "You know what, Heidi?" Jenna said, her voice deadly calm now in a way that was somehow more frightening than her anger had been. "Maybe the rumors about you being difficult to work with aren't rumors at all. Maybe everyone in the industry knows exactly who you really are. That was it. That was the final straw. Heidi's face went completely white, and for a moment the only sound in the studio was the quiet hum of the camera equipment and the air conditioning system. The silence that followed Jenna's final verbal assault was deafening. Heidi stood frozen for what felt like an eternity, her chest rising and falling with barely controlled rage. When she finally spoke, her voice was so quiet that the boom operators had to strain to pick it up. "You know what, Jenna?" Heidi said, her tone now eerily calm in contrast to the heated exchange that had just taken place. "I've done hundreds of interviews in my career. I've sat through awkward questions, inappropriate comments, and even a few hostile hosts. But this is something else entirely." Jenna opened her mouth to respond, but Heidi held up a hand to stop her. "No. You've had your turn to talk. Now it's mine," Heidi continued, her voice gaining strength with every word. "You invited me here under false pretenses. You told my publicist this would be a friendly conversation about my current projects. Instead, you've spent the entire time trying to destroy my reputation based on unnamed sources and unconfirmed gossip." The studio audience was completely mesmerized now, sensing they were witnessing something that would go down in television history. Camera operators were zooming in to capture every micro-expression on both women's faces. "But here's what really gets me," Heidi went on, taking a step back from Jenna's desk but maintaining eye contact. "You've been in this industry long enough to know how hard it is for women to succeed, especially in comedy. You know the extra scrutiny we face, the impossible standards we're held to. And instead of supporting each other, you've decided to tear me down for content." "Heidi, if you would just let me explain," Jenna tried to interject, but her voice lacked the conviction it had carried throughout their confrontation. "Explain what?" Heidi shot back, her composure cracking again. "Explain how ambushing your guests makes for good television? Explain how spreading unsubstantiated rumors about someone's character is journalism? I'd love to hear that explanation." Jenna's face was a mixture of defiance and something that might have been shame, but she wasn't backing down completely. "Look, I may have come on a little strong, but these are legitimate industry concerns that people are talking about," Jenna said, though her voice had lost much of its earlier aggression. "If there's nothing to these rumors, then addressing them head-on should clear the air." "Clear the air?" Heidi laughed, but it was a sound completely devoid of humor. "Jenna, you can't unring a bell. You've just spent 25 minutes on national television suggesting that I'm a difficult person to work with, that I've been demoted at SNL, and that there are mysterious industry insiders who have problems with me. Do you think a simple denial from me erases all of that?" The truth of what Heidi was saying seemed to hit Jenna like a physical blow. For the first time since the interview began, she looked genuinely uncertain. "That wasn't my intention," Jenna said weakly, but even she didn't sound convinced by her own words. "Your intention?" Heidi's voice rose again, her anger reigniting. "Your intention was to create a moment, to get people talking about your show, to generate buzz at my expense. Well, congratulations, you succeeded." Heidi began reaching for her wireless microphone pack, and everyone in the studio realized what was happening. The guest was preparing to leave, something that virtually never happened during a live television interview. "Heidi, please, let's just take a breath here," Jenna said, panic creeping into her voice as she realized how bad this was going to look for her and her show. "We can reset, start fresh with some different questions." "Start fresh?" Heidi repeated incredulously, pausing in her attempt to remove the microphone. "Jenna, this is live television. There is no starting fresh. Millions of people just watched. You tried to destroy my reputation, and now you want to pretend it didn't happen." "I wasn't trying to destroy anything," Jenna protested, but her words sounded hollow even to her own ears. "I was trying to have an honest conversation about some industry rumors." Honest conversation? Heidi shook her head in disgust. An honest conversation would have started with you telling me beforehand what you planned to discuss. An honest conversation would have involved giving me a chance to prepare responses to serious allegations. This wasn't honest. This was an ambush. The production staff in the control room were frantically trying to figure out how to handle the situation. Should they cut to commercial? Should they let it play out? The ratings were probably through the roof, but this was also a public relations nightmare in the making. You know what the really sad part is? Heidi continued, successfully removing her microphone and holding it in her hand like a weapon. I actually used to respect you. I thought you were one of the good ones. Someone who understood how to make celebrities feel comfortable while still asking interesting questions. I guess I was wrong. Heidi, please don't do this, Jenna pleaded. And for the first time during the entire interview, she sounded genuinely vulnerable. We can work this out. We can find a way to end this on a better note. A better note? Heidi looked around the studio, taking in the shocked faces of the audience, the crew members who were trying to look busy while obviously listening to every word, and finally back to Jenna herself. The only way this could end on a better note is if it had never started at all. With that, Heidi placed her microphone on Jenna's desk with deliberate care, as if she were placing a weapon back in its holster. The small thud it made when it hit the surface somehow seemed to echo throughout the entire studio. Ladies and gentlemen, Heidi said, turning to address the studio audience directly, her voice carrying clearly without amplification. I came here today to talk about my work, my passion for comedy, and some exciting projects I have coming up. Instead, I've been subjected to what can only be described as a character assassination based on rumors and gossip. The audience was hanging on every word, many of them pulling out their phones to record what was clearly going to be a viral moment. I want everyone watching to know that I take my craft seriously. I treat my colleagues with respect, and I don't deserve to be treated like this by anyone, regardless of their platform or their ratings, Heidi continued, her voice strong and clear. And Jenna, I hope someday you figure out the difference between journalism and gossip, because right now you're failing at both. With that final devastating blow, Heidi turned and began walking toward the exit. The studio audience didn't know whether to applaud, gasp, or remain silent. So they did a little bit of all three, creating a strange murmur that followed her across the stage. Heidi, wait! Jenna called out one last time, but it was clear that her heart wasn't really in it anymore. The damage was done, and everyone in the building knew it. Heidi paused at the edge of the stage, not turning around but speaking loud, enough for everyone to hear. Good luck with your show, Jenna. I hope the ratings boost was worth it, she said, and then she was gone, disappearing behind the stage curtains and leaving behind one of the most explosive moments in daytime television history. Jenna stood alone at her desk, still holding her note cards, facing a studio audience that didn't know how to react and cameras that were still rolling. The silence stretched on for several long seconds before she finally managed to speak. We'll be right back after this commercial break, she said weakly, and mercifully, the red lights on the cameras finally went dark. So there you have it. One of the most dramatic walk-offs in television history. The tension between these two comedy powerhouses exploded into something none of us saw coming. What do you think really triggered this confrontation? Was Jenna justified in her line of questioning, or did she cross a line? Make sure to subscribe for more incredible behind-the-scenes stories, and let me know in the comments what you think was the real reason behind this explosive clash.